Hi fellow developers and gamers. Tonight we'll open a book of 49 keys that will take us into the rabbit hole of magical puzzles. We'll learn how to cast spells, we'll discover some interesting lore that is based on real magical books. So let's check it out. You can do it yourself on Steam, it's a free demo. So let's see what this game has to offer. It was the year of our Lord 1520. A most unusual figure arrived by dusk at the gates of the Dominican convent in Sant Agostino, Padua. His modest carriage was pulled by a black mule. Presenting himself at the convent's gates, he would speak but one word, my name. His strikingly uncommon features suggested he hailed from a distant realm, a mysterious Eastern land perhaps. To me, he handed a letter scribed upon parchment before climbing back into his carriage without a word. Then he left, never to return. Upon returning to my chamber, I unfurled the parchment, raising it to the window sills, through which faint rays of the setting sun shone. With a sudden surge of emotion, I discovered the missive was penned by none other than Master, aged yet never to be forgotten. When I had not long donned the cassock, I dwelt within the convent of San Domenico, Bologna. In those days it was he who stood as my prior. In that sacred abode, he had introduced me to the Holy Scriptures and their study, to the church doctors and to the eminent theologians. However, his thirst for knowledge was so great that it could never be sated by these few pursuits, noble though they were. Thus, taking aside a number of us monks who shared his thirst for learning, he began introducing us to various other disciplines. With great delight, I might add. Astronomy was a particular passion of his. The charting of the stars, their positions and motions, and astrology, which studies their influence upon worldly affairs. We, his disciples, were truly gripped by his lessons. Even today, though many years might have passed, I cherish them so. They live on in my mind, vivid and untouched memories. An immense sorrow engulfed me as I perused his letter. Master informed me that this time on earth was drawing to a close, and so he was preparing to undertake the long journey toward God. Hence, he had decided to leave me with an invaluable work, a form of inheritance, a work that only I could safeguard in his stead. He explained little of his work, yet this, along with the urgency with which I was summoned to his residence, only served to further fuel my already keen curiosity. I dearly hoped to reach him before his departure from this life, and so departed promptly upon the dawn. I informed the prior, a man with whom I was quite close, and joined a group of timber merchants heading westward the following day. After several days on the road, I purchased an old, sticky mule for a few coins. I then left the merchant caravan and head northwest toward the mountains and lakes past the Duchy of Milan. One of those lakes was to be the final stop upon my journey. Master had written of reaching a small town upon the river Olona, the name of which now escapes me. There, near the college church, I was to find an abbot who would then lead me to his hermitage by the lake shore. A holy man there gave me the terrible news that Master had passed on several weeks earlier. He himself had witnessed the body as it was ferried across the lake for funeral rites and a fitting burial. His words plunged me into the deepest despair. My companion noticed my dejection and tried to comfort me with great compassion. I then asked the holy man if he had been given anything to hand to me. He merely explained with a shake of head that a peculiar-looking stranger had only brought him a message, with instructions to receive me at the college church. The monastery where he served as abbot belonged to master's family, and there he had lived in solitude. Only a few servants kept him company in a place out upon one of the lake's islands. The servants had left the place over the past few days, hence I would receive no welcome. However, he explained, its gates would be left open to allow me access to the interior. I spent the night in the cell of a monastery, perched high atop rocky cliffs, mulling over the years of my youth in the San Domenico convent. Some despised the master for his sharp intellect in those gloomy days, spewing hateful accusations of him working dark magic or dealing with the wicked. Only his belonging to an influential family in the area had saved him from trial, but he was still forced to leave the order and take refuge in that isolated place in the middle of the lake. Nevertheless, his closest disciples, with myself amongst them, were punished accordingly and sent off to different convents beyond the Papal States. I spent much of the following day in the monastery church, praying to the Virgin and the saints for the salvation of my master's soul. As sunset approached, I was joined in my cell by the lay brother who would ferry me to the island. I greeted the abbot with warmth, and he prayed for God to grant me safe passage. We reached our destination after a short journey on a humble boat. I bid the ferryman farewell and promptly set off along a steep path toward the center of the island, eager to reach the palace gates as soon as possible. And we uncovered a new location, Palace. The palace, a squarish two-story block, featured a small tower in its northwest corner. The south-facing brick facade was already in shadow at that twilight hour. The entrance, topped by an arch, was sealed shut with two heavy oak doors. I put faith in the abbot's words that the gate would be open to receive me, and pushed upon the solid wood doors. Alas, they didn't budge an inch. Peering through the slit between them, I was surprised to see a thick wooden plank serving as a crude deadbolt lock. I presumed that perhaps some servant still resided within, and so tugged at the rope bell pulled by the doors. Nobody answered my call. Despite my efforts, the interior remained silent and still. The palace seemed uninhabited. It was clear that I would have to find another way in. You unlocked a map. Select a location to explore it. Scroll to zoom. Oh, not much to zoom about, okay. But I like the style of the map. So, we cannot get into the abbey where our master was living his rest of his life. So let's take a look at the shack. Hints. If you are having difficulties, click the question mark at the top right to receive a hint, insight, or the solution itself, revelation, if you're still stuck. Okay. Yes, those are indeed storage shed and stable and chicken coop. Descended into a small cultivated garden on a terraced section of the land. At the far end toward the east were several wooden storage sheds. Further on, a simple stable stood alongside a chicken coop. Let's check out the storage sheds. In these humble sheds were stored agricultural tools, firewood, and animal feed. A shack alongside them housed an abandoned rowboat in modest condition. Stables. The rotting wooden shack had once served as a basic stable, holding no more than 3 steeds. No trace of the animals remained. A servant must have returned them to the mainland following master's death. The chicken coop was also bare, but inside it, the scent of grain still hung in the air. It became apparent that those dismal species held nothing of use for me. Okay, so the icon probably means us. Yes. I slowly made my way through the trees, feet sinking into the carpet of autumn dry leaves amidst the whispering chorus of the woodland wildlife. I recognized chirrups of timid squirrels and the deep calls of blackbirds hidden up high in the chestnut branches. Familiar sounds evoked memories of my carefree childhood, of the hunting games played with my brothers and cousins under the watchful eyes of our fathers. Okay, let's head north. Having advanced several paces, I found the earth sloping rapidly toward the lake. Its tranquil surface soon appeared from behind the trunks, lit by the glow of the sunset. All of a sudden, the coastline had grown too steep to continue, and so I made a sharp turn east, following the shore. Eventually, I reached a vantage point where the foliage thinned, allowing me to peer upon a wider expanse from a distance. In that direction, I spied on how the island's coast formed a small but definitive indentation, a small gulf. About halfway into a cove, there stood an entrance to a cave within the rocky walls, partially shielded by sprawling fern leaves. Reaching it could afford me passage to the palace's underground caverns. However, I needed a boat. The rocky wall was far too steep and smooth to permit my descent. To plunge into those deep lake waters was also out of the question, for I not know how to swim. Oh, exclamation mark. Okay, let's get back east. Thus I continued eastward, following the thin shadows of chestnut and birch trunks that stretched in the wing light. The myriad chestnut shells embedded in the yellowed leaves pricked through my humble footwear. Several strides further, I reached a narrow clearing. There the mulch of the underbush finally drew to an end. I found myself surrounded by birch trees, growing in a perfect circle. A glint from one promptly caught my eye. Sunken into its wood sparkled the blade of a modest axe, likely forgotten by a place servant. I knew it could prove useful, and so with a little effort managed to prise it free, firmly gripping the handle and leveraging it with my foot. Oh, so we have an inventory. Nice. You found an item. To use it, drag it over to a paragraph. Right-click to examine an item. Okay. So I can use it, but nothing happens. There, we probably need some kind of wooden obstacle or something. So here are maps, and here are items. Like, UI is pretty clean so far. I really like it. I don't think this exclamation mark fits. It should be like in the style of the map, because it just doesn't look really immersive. Oh. Okay, let's check out this. Oh, there was a rowboat. Right. I realized that tricky as it was, that vessel was my only means to reach the cave. I heaved the boat with some difficulty back down the path I'd taken, setting it down in the calm lake waters. I was by no means an experienced oarsman, but in my youth had sailed short stretches of the rivers by the grand family castle. I took to the oars and aimed the bow eastward, intending to cover the least distance possible by following the shoreline. The lake's calm tranquility and the delicate touch of the setting sun eased my troubled mind, if just for a moment. I shifted my gaze westward, watching as the great glowing orb sunk behind silhouettes of the darkened mountain. Then, the shimmering of sun upon the lake's all but still surface, a sight that filled me with gratitude. Oh, and we got a nice picture. I felt a part of that magnificent harmony and began to comprehend the stark truth of the philosopher's words, how the celestial world and its utter perfection reflects the true great grandeur of God, of His might. Great spheres high above, revolving with divine majesty. I came to understand how that same grandeur permeates our mortal world, in the waters of lakes and seas, in the fires that blaze within the earth's core, in the dark stone of the mountains. Moreover, it lives on in the saps of plants, in each breath of the animals, and in the most perfect creation, in which the entire cosmos is replicated, man himself. I saw how all is one, so within, so without, so above, so below. My pondering drew to a sharp halt, with the appearance of a small gulf from before. I turned to the cave mouth and the ferns that reached out across it. From there, a long tunnel carved into the rock face extended towards the center of the island. I set off my boat, rowing several strokes more, as the darkness grew denser and the screeching of bats increased. Let's enter the cave. Only when the boat abruptly grazed the rocky wall did I realize that I'd reached the end of the tunnel. By then, the darkness was so thick that I had to stand, feeling blindly forth as I pulled the boat on ahead. Finding a narrow stone staircase to my left, I abandoned the boat to begin a cautious ascent, endeavoring not to slip upon the damp mossy steps. I moved slowly in the blanket of utter darkness, with my right arm tracing the wall, and my left reaching out for any obstacles along the way. After a few steps, I brushed against the wooden surface of what seemed like a rough door. I speculated that this may once have served the inhabitants as a secret route out from the island, a means to escape pirates' attacks. The thought gave me confidence that beyond this threshold there lay the underground palace chambers. This confidence soon gave the way to a disappointment, however, when I tried to push the door and found it blocked. Items. To open the door, you need to use an item. To do so, drag an item into the left page. Oh, so that's where we can use the axe. I recalled the axe I had found in the birch grove. Such a door didn't seem sturdy enough to withstand a well-aimed blow or two, and so the axe handle gripped firmly in my hands. I began to strike with all the strength I could muster. With a few swings, the sodden planks had started to give way, and a few forceful kicks granted an opening through the door into the palace interior. Hey, but we lose the axe. Before proceeding, I turned to retrieve the axe, yet its blade was sunken into the door, and in my attempts to dislodge it, the handle snapped clean off. That's unfortunate. We'll need to do without an axe then. But at least we can enter the palace. A faint light dimly illuminated the palace. It emanated from a few worn-out candles, leaned up against the base of a column positioned at the room's center. I found myself standing in a cellar, walled by damp brick, its low vaults supported by stout stone columns. Ascending a staircase that led to a small doorway, I advanced into a long rectangular room that had been converted into the palace kitchen. I then ventured down a passageway to the right, entering a square courtyard with rows of columns. Several doors stood within its walls, and it was overshadowed by two additional stories, both also with rows and columns. I raised my eyes to the sky. Twilight had arrived. That night, in unfamiliar surroundings, I was to uncover the arcane legacy left to me by my master. Nothing could have prepared me for what I would witness within those walls. things terrible and extraordinary in equal measure. Wait, that's it? Well, that's unremarkably short for a demo. And I don't think I even scratched what the game is about. It was just a few passages of text that you can read, one item you can use. You promised magic, you promised puzzles, yet the demo doesn't show any of those elements. Like right now, I was getting excited and I'm very, very disappointed. Well, I think I will still post it because like I put some time into recording it, but the demo should actually show me some kind of content that will be representative of what the full version is. And especially like in such a slow-paced game where we spent 43 minutes playing it and it was mostly reading the text and there was no interaction with the game basically, except for using the axe, and that's no means of presenting the game, of making it appeal to people. Like, why would I want to play this game? I still don't know what is it about. I do not play a game because of a story. Not only. I mean, I can read a book because I'm intrigued in a story, but if you want me to play a game, you should show me that the gameplay will be fun, the gameplay loop will be interesting, that the game will draw me in. Otherwise, what's the point of playing? I can just watch the gameplay, or in this case, probably one can create a podcast about playing this game, which is interesting. Like, imagine having a podcast with gameplay. That could be fun. So, those are my thoughts. Thank you for watching. Leave your comments. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you do not. I'm really curious what you think.